Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for One Piece Season 9 on Netflix. And this comprises of the arcs of Enies Lobby, CP9, and then the Ice Hunters thing, while also dealing with the Going Merry and Frankie and everything. So, I actually really enjoyed this one, mainly the Enies Lobby, CP9, and dealing with what goes on with the Going Merry and Frankie. The Ice Hunters one, not so much. This jacket is like, yay for a good amount of this, and then what the fuck was going on with this last one? Now, granted, I know it's filler, but it was like really bad filler, and I was like, well, granted, kind of reaching my limit at this point, where I'm like, okay, I've gone through a lot of stuff. Kind of need a little bit of a break. And that's going to be happening. So I did attempt to try to watch it in Japanese first with the Enies Lobby arc, and I just couldn't really get into it. Not that the voice acting was bad, but I would have to read what was going on and then go back to line it up with what was going on as well. It's the kind of downside of like watching the action going on and going with the subtitles as well, in that I have to read what's going on and then try and figure it out of what's kind of going on and almost do double duty on it. That's why I kind of prefer the dub with such a long kind of show, even though that means I'm going to have to wait for what kind of goes on for a catch-up thing for them to dub it. And as long as they keep the translation kind of close enough. So I attempted it and it just didn't jive with me. So I then redid it, going through with the dub, and was able to kind of blitz through and get through this. And I really like the Enies Lobby one, though granted there are certain kind of bits within it that is like pacing padding. And I did get to a point where I'm like, skip the intro and skip the recap because of how much time it just took. And it cuts down the time considerably, of like a 20-some episode to sometimes 17 or whatnot. A 24-minute kind of episode to like 17-minute kind of like runtime of what's going on, and being like, oh, okay, because I'm like, I just watched it, I don't need the recap. That helps for if you're going week to week and you're like, what the fuck did I do? Oh, okay. So we get Robin and Frankie pretty much captured by CP9, going through Enies Lobby kind of stuff. We get Luffy and the Straw Hats pretty much trying to come up with their plan with Galila and the Frankie family. And I actually really like more the Frankie family and the Galila people more than Frankie at this point. I mean, we do get through everything that they go through in this season. I'm like, okay, I kind of see them being able to forgive Frankie, even though he stole their shit and beat the fucking shit out of Usopp, which helped roll into things of what goes on with him having to be the Sniper King kind of dude that only Luffy and Chopper are able to be like, he's Sniper King, he's not Usopp. It's like, alright. So we pretty much see that the plane goes to shit out the window, where Luffy just like thunderfucks his way through the island of just doing everything that he can, and pretty much then starts pretty much having to run around the main kind of bit of the island, because they get this whole thing of like, alright, we're going to smash through and we're going to have the Straw Hats pretty much be the vanguard force, have them fresh and everything to fight CP9, which makes complete tactical sense. Luffy, of course, is like, fuck that shit, I'm going in. I'm getting my friend Nico Robin. Which I like that he's got that view of his friends, but it leads to tactical errors of everybody being behind and having to like deal with some crazy ass shit because he like bum rushed through. And we see that they eventually kind of gum through. Zoro kind of helps like get them through, and they're kind of going through on Rocket Man. The Frankie family pretty much is able to kind of like open up everything. We get introduced to two giants at CP9. Well, the world government employs, they think that their bosses, which we've already previously met, which was a nice callback, and they're still dueling, they think that they're an impel down in the prison area of Enies Lobby and what's going on with the world government, and have been doing this shit for 50 years. Spoiler alert, there gets to some points where like Usopp gets left behind, as the rest of the Straw Hats are pretty much catching up to try and get to Luffy. And he is able to relay to the Giants because Omio and Kashi. Omio is crying because he's like, we failed our bosses and everything. He's like, no, your bosses are out there. You got bamboozled. Fuck that noise. And then the giants come onto their side, which was a nice kind of cool bit. I think it was a believable kind of turn on him, not to just get, oh, hey, let's get these guys on our side. Granted, I think they dealt with the giants well enough that it'd be like, ah, shit, we're fucked up. So bringing them in like this and being like, fuck that, it just proves the world's government is real shitty. And them just joining the side. So then we see them kind of like busting through. We see the leader of CP9, Spondum, being a complete and utter asshole to Nico Robin and Frankie, wanting the plans for like the ultimate kind of weapon, and Nico Robin to use her knowledge of the poneglyphs to give that to the world government and do their their version of justice and peace, which sucks. We then get introduced also to other members of CP9, of Kunamori, Jabra, and Fukaru? Fukaru, I believe. And Luffy's still going on a rampage. Let's see. Where are you at, you son bitch? I think his name is Fukaru. He's a dude that's pretty much fucking doing his own kind of weird thing with his like zipped up. He keeps like freaking like saying all this shit. We see that they've like got problems with him because of what's kind of going on, and then of course Kokaku, Kefla. I'm completely. Let me see. CP9 these members. Fukaru, yeah, Khalifa. That's it. Yeah, and of course we've got Rob Lucci and everything, and they kind of come in. We see that Spondum also gives them devil fruits, one that goes to Kaku that gives him, we see later on when that gets into that arc, giraffe powers, and we see that Khalifa she becomes a soap person, which I'm glad that they were able to make that kind of dangerous, because that kind of becomes the kind of balance. I really like the Enies Lobby arc of like seeing the Straw Hats going through bull rushing Sheed and how strong that they've become, and then putting up against a nice kind of challenge with CP9. And we see that Luffy pretty much fucks around for a little bit, mainly because he's gone so far ahead and they kind of need him to kind of waste time. And Spondum thinks that like, oh, the Straw Hats only like took out 5 people, and it's like, no, we've got a lot of people out, man, a lot. So they deal with this other dude who's kind of like Cerberus, which is actually just 3 dudes, which is like the Baskerville. We got these watchdogs and these like guilty juror people, and it's just kind of showing that like it's a kangaroo court. Everybody's pretty much already been thought of as guilty in the world government's eyes before they're sent to impel down and into the prison. Now granted, that's just mainly a teasing, because the whole kind of thing is they need to get to Nico Robin before then, and otherwise she's lost to them forever. And the thing is, that's part of his crew. He didn't give him permission to leave, kind of like Usopp, which is a completely different matter. So I kind of like that juggling of it. So they pretty much then get together. They're up top. Luffy starts fighting Bluno under the orders from Spondum, and Luffy is able to do some of the like powers that CP9 can do, and then he shows off his Gear 2 form, which was actually pretty cool. Gear 3 also gets shown off in the CP9 arc, but I almost hesitate to even call that some kind of form. It's more like an augmentation of using his powers, where I understand that a gear is partially that, but we see that he's able to change up his blood flow and create himself into a kind of stronger, faster kind of mode at the kind of expense of his life. And we see him take on a more pinkish hue and have his steam coming off, and he destroys Blue Note. Now, granted, it's kind of a there's more of a back and forth for Blue Nose using his Door fruit powers that fuck with Luffy a little bit. And he's like, what the fuck's going on with this shit? Before he pretty much takes him out. And it's like, god damn, we see that Luffy has gotten better because the CP9 people could just pretty much deal with him however they wanted. And now he's able to effectively fight back. And then, of course, we see the rest of them dealing with and coming up, and finally all the Straw Hats are arraigned. We see that Spondum has been abusing Nico, Robin, and Frankie, that he has the ability to call a Buster Call, waving around the transponder snail, and we see that Nico Robin wants them to just let her die. And then we start getting the whole backstory of her, that 20 years previously, she was from the island of O'Hara. And this is where we get the Devils of O'Hara. They're an island of archaeologists, and they've actually been studying the poneglyphs, and that is against the world government's laws, the punishable by death, because there's a blank century, and they're like, what the fuck happened here? And Nico has had a shitty childhood. She has her devil fruit powers at pretty much 8. She is in the care of like an aunt and uncle kind of scenario, and is not treated very well, and decides to pretty much become an archaeologist to kind of learn more stuff, try and be kind of like her mother, try and find more about her mother, and like kind of help her out. And we see the Dr. Clover kind of telling her about this and telling her not to study the poneglyphs. And even though they are doing it, they've got this giant tree of like with all these books and everything. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool. But then we learned that the world government is coming to pretty much make an example of O'Hara, and that this one dude, Jaeger de Saul, has helped Olivia, Nico's mother, escape from the world government because he hasn't liked what they've been doing, because they're archaeologists. Why are you killing them like this? This is insane. And Nico, of course, helps him out, but he finds out, I've landed here. Oh shit, and we see that Spondum's father has been there and has the ability to call a Buster Call as well. And he's talking pretty much to Dr. Clover, figuring out that they had learned more information than the world government's leaders wanted, because they get on a transponder snail, and Dr. Clover pretty much lays out there was a war between two factions, between whoever did the poneglyphs and whoever pretty much won, and that the people that did the poneglyphs pretty much were disseminating this information because they knew they were going to lose, and that whoever's kind of coalition took over and fought against them would probably try and erase that kind of history. And then this, of course, led the leaders to tell them to kill them and initiate the Buster Call. Spondum's father does, and everything starts pretty much breaking loose. Jaeger de Saul is pissed off. The people that they were going to let go are like, no, fuck that shit. And this Buster Call is instituted with like 5 vice admirals and 10 battleships, and they just start destroying everything. They destroy the evacuation ship, killing all the people. We even see Aokiji pretty much being like, what the fuck is going on here? He kills Jaeger de Saul with his ice powers, but then sees that everything's kind of going nuts. The turning point is pretty much when the evacuation ship is destroyed, and he then decides to let Nico Robin go and be like, hey, let's see if this kind of works, because Jaeger de Saul's like, listen, ain't nobody in this world is born to be alone. You will find friends eventually that will fight for you. And of course, that's the Straw Hats, and seeing them arraigned there and kind of learning all this information, and Spondum being like, ha ha ha. And I really like the moment where Luffy tasks Sniper King with burning the world government's flag. And see, this isn't just any kind of symbolic kind of thing. Flags are an important kind of thing within One Piece, because the Jolly Roger signifies the pirates themselves. It's not just a flag that just goes there because there's so many kind of issues when you lose your Jolly Roger. This, he's declaring war on the world government and all of the countries arraigned with it. And Spondum's like, you son of a bitch! And everybody, all the rest of the Marines that are still alive, well, most of them are knocked out, but there could be some that have died. but I'm gonna go with most of them that are still conscious are like, what the fuck are they up to? But I'm with them because this is bullshit. You annihilated an island and you made this girl hunted for 20 years and to make her feel like she doesn't deserve to live, and you belittle her and you beat her, and it fucking made me just angry with Spondum and them just being like, Luffy wants to hear her say that she wants to live, and then her crying and shouting that and saying, take me with you, I want to live. And it even affects Frankie where he's crying. He's like, I love you guys and everything. And then, of course, the Frankie family like, hey! And the thing is, they were trying to lower down this drawbridge to get to him, but it wasn't lowering down. And, of course, Granny Kokoro, the monster granny, is utilizing Rocket Man. And I love... Now, granted, this does take a while because it's like a kind of break thing where they like break up the pacing before we get to the CP9 arc. Seeing Luffy's kind of grin, grabbing all the Straw Hats and like putting them down, there were some kind of mistakes that kind of happened. Let's see here. One of them is that when Frankie gets pretty much kicked off because Frankie's like, fuck you, Spondum, he pretty much blazes off and destroys the plans for the weaponized ship. And he's like, screw you. Spondum pushes him off to pretty much murder his ass. I'm like, fuck you, asshole. And he's got a sword that ate a devil fruit for an elephant. That is not important, but we just need to know power sets of things. So Rocket Man's blasting through, and Frankie first is in the front of the ship, and then, not the ship, fuck, the train. And then he's on the side saying, what the fuck are you guys doing? And then it crashes in and he's on the front. It's like, what the hell? There's also the one in CP9 where Zoro's talking without his sword in his mouth, and then he's got the sword in his mouth while he's fighting Kaku and Jabra. And then Usopp's like being carried by Zoro and Sanji at one point, and then he's chasing after him. It's just weird little inconsistencies like that that pop up. Do they take my overall enjoyment away? No. But it's one of those things when you notice, you're like, what the fuck? It's kind of like in Oceans, where Brad Pitt's eating a shrimp cocktail, and at first it's in like a bowl, and then it goes to a plate, then it goes back to a bowl again. It's really kind of weird. But anyway, we then see that we are moving into the CP9 arc where Spondum's freaking out. It's like the Straw Hats have breached and pretty much run amok on one of the places that is the world government's stronghold and sanctuary. This is... I am kind of surprised. Now, granted, we are pretty much 300 episodes deep into this anime, which has gotten up to like 1,000. But it's like, holy shit, I thought it would take a little bit more time to get to the point where they would do this kind of thing to fight against the world government. Well, to this kind of level. You normally thought that this would be a kind of endgame kind of scenario, where they're like, okay, we got to get somebody out where they got big enough that they needed to get somebody out of a prison or whatnot. And granted, that could happen at some point as well again, later on. But I do like this because it showcases that the Straw Hats do not give a fuck, and they will fight even if it kills them, because that's their philosophy. He's getting his friends back, and his friends are going to help him, or they're going to die trying. So they get there. We kind of learn that, of course, Nico Robin has, of course, devil fruit dampening handcuffs on, and we see that Fukaru pretty much is like, hey, yeah, we've each got keys, so you got to pretty much fight us. And Spondum's already kind of going down to the gates of justice to pretty much put her into prison. And we then see that they kind of split up. Luffy, of course, is going after pretty much Robin and Rob Lucci and Spondum because he just goes off like that. Frankie is a better kind of moderating kind of force, as we then see them kind of go and try and figure out where each of the different kind of CP9 members are. Zoro going after Kaku, which then links up with Usopp's eventually. Sanji just kind of like tooling around until he gets to with Khalifa. No, Khalifa. Why the fuck do I keep doing that? Oh wait, it is Khalifa. Ugh. I always worry that I am going Kefla from Dragon Ball Super instead of Khalifa. We get Frankie fighting Fukaru, Usopp with Jabra, Blue Nose already out of commission. We see that Nami kind of deals with Kunamori at first before Chopper kind of takes over with that. And it's interesting. Kunamori is more of the kind of a kabuki theater kind of asshole, which is definitely kind of interesting. We see him pretty much like trying to kill himself, but he's got the iron body, so he can't kill himself. He is a competent fighter enough to kind of scare Nami, and I'm like, this dude's fucking freak. He's got more control over his hair, but then Chopper's the one that kind of goes after him and tries to take him on because he got locked in a fridge and then ate all this food and then got him to like fuck around with his powers. But it gets to a point that Chopper has used so many rumble walls that he decides to do it again to force himself to go through this transformation, and he gets into a monstrous kind of state where he's out of control, and it does all this kind of shit. Now granted, the tower starts getting even kind of more fucked up because Kaku decides to utilize the kind of like Tempest kick kind of shit and like breaks kind of shit. But the weirdness that kind of goes on that kind of derails it a little bit for me. I don't mind the comedic aspect of Zoro accidentally getting handcuffed with Usopp because he was trying to utilize that to take out one of the other CP9 members, which is a smart idea. But then they're handcuffed together, and it kind of gets a little bit more comedy-driven, and just like, all right, let's kind of see what's going on, where he's utilizing Usopp as a sword. But they're kind of, again, in a holding pattern until Chopper had pretty much seen that they needed another key, so that's where he kind of like details with Kunamori and fighting him to try and get the key. Frankie, of course, got that information from Chopper and is able to take out Fukaru, which does take him some bits because he had to replenish his cola, and that was a pretty good fight because Fukaru is not really that much of a kind of menacing character, more of a kind of annoying character, but Frankie still has a harder kind of time dealing with him, not showcasing that Frankie is weak or anything like that, but that he has to figure out how to utilize his cyborg abilities to fight him more effectively. Nami then has to take on Khalifa more because Sanji won't hit a woman. I'm like, okay, get that. But then he's like all super smooth, and of course this is where she starts cracking out her soap kind of powers, and it uses it to weaken people. And Nami actually fighting her and effectively fighting her and like beating her with like lightning strikes really worked very well. It really showcased her abilities of utilizing the climb attack very well and doing it in different kind of ways to take down an enemy that is stronger than her. And that's not saying that Nami is weak. However, she's not on the physical kind of levels that a Devil Fruit user, well, a physical kind of level that the CP9 members are at, or how a Devil Fruit user is. And I liked it because it showcased how well she can do stuff, and also how well Usopp as Sniper King can do stuff as well, because they eventually are able to get the keys from Khalifa, from Fukaru, from Kunamori, and they're able to get them pretty much out of there. Jabra then fights Sanji after he gets better from his defeat from Khalifa, and that was actually a really good fight. Him heating up his legs to like deal immense damage to him, and Jabra was pretty much able to, I like that we showcased that he was able to kind of trick some people, but then he tried to trick Sanji to like, that ain't dealing with me, man. And then Zoro utilizing this kind of like really kind of crazy 9-blade kind of Ashura kind of thing against Kaku was really kind of awesome. So once we got down to the fights and really got into the nitty gritty, I really liked it, and that we were able to showcase our characters through their actions. That is one of the strengths of One Piece, and that I like seeing. This is kind of weird, but I'm always a kind of like an action movie and an action kind of series person, and I like understanding what works and what doesn't. The best kind of action you get is when action scenes showcase characters, i.e. how they fight, why they fight, and how they can get upper hands in certain kind of instances. And a great example, like these fights do those things because Chopper was in a bad position and he went with a nuclear option that like caused a lot of chaos and destruction, but then he eventually, their plan was to pretty much put him into the ocean to get him knocked out so that way he's okay, and they got him out. We got Monster Granny's granddaughter was able to like find this whole thing because she followed Spondum and Nico and Rob Lucci and was able to showcase it to Luffy. He utilizes Gear 3 first as a tease, and he goes through it as a really small, but he eventually catches up to them and fights Rob Lucci, eventually going into Gear 2 and then utilizing Gear 3 where he pretty much makes an incision and inflates his body to giant proportions. This one I feel is more of a, not really a gear to me, but that's just my feeling. I don't hate it. It definitely makes sense for him to have giant kind of like bashing abilities and everything, because Frankie then comes behind him. He's able to hold off Rob Lucci enough for Frankie to get up there. Spondum just being a complete dickhole, and Nico is actually actively fighting him now to live, and Frankie's able to kind of like beat the shit out of him, get the keys because they had pretty much beaten all the rest of the CP9 members, and he's able to do that, get her out, and they're able to kind of like fight off Spondum because he had accidentally initiated the Buster Call while this was kind of going on, mainly before Frankie was able to line up with them, and we see that that is introduced and they burn Enies Lobby. The world government has a nuclear option that they don't even question of like, that's our own thing, why are we calling a Buster Call on them? What the fuck's going on here? So that starts going on. Chaos is ensuing. The island is burning. The Giants and the rest of the guys are able to get out, even though we get a fake out that they have died. The fight with Luffy and Rob Lucci was really kind of good because he does get knocked down to a certain bit, but then Sniper King is able to rally him back up, and he's like, I'm not falling down again. And then they start fighting out through, and he's able to take down Rob Lucci, and that was really kind of cool. Utilizing, he did more damage in Gear 3 than Rob Lucci thought, but he just keeps using his indomitable will to take him down, utilizing Gear 2 and the effective abilities of taking on him with his Gum Gum Gatling. And he just fucking wrecks his ass, and everybody's like, what the fuck? And the thing is, Luffy is, he's down now because he can't move. And then we see the rest of the Buster Call is throwing captains at the Straw Hats as they've linked back up with everyone on this bridge, pretty much leading to the Gates of Justice. They were going to utilize one of the Marine ships that Spondum was going to use, but he gets fucking taken down a lot. And it's cool to show the power level strength of our heroes now as they're able to take on captains, which normally would be a harder kind of fight. Now granted, these are no-name captains, so getting a smoker or whatnot or other kind of higher level Navy captain into effect would be a different kind of bit. And granted, they also didn't fight any of the vice admirals or actual admirals because Aokiji is still on a power kind of train. But although granted, we do get Garp later on to see what's going on. So then we start seeing that our Straw Hats are hearing something and they're told to go into the sea. And we see that the Going Merry from Water 7 has come to save her crew. And it's a big one because we then see that Nico Robin throws Luffy into the sea and everyone's like, it's the Mary. And the Mary's able to get them out one last time. And Spondum's like, fuck, they're gone. And it's like, this is a complete and utter travesty. It's like, yes, your grandstanding for victory is undone because you are a stupid fucking asshole. CP9 has been completely and utterly trashed by a group of pirates that you probably would have never even taken seriously before. And then we see the end as we see them link back up with the others, but the Mary breaks and we see them finally have to deal with the Mary going out. And she's given a good send-off as Luffy lights her on fire to send her off in style. As he cries, Usopp cries, but Nami cries. Everybody, it's like, the only ones not really are Zoro and Sanji. And it was just a nice farewell. It's like, alright. And then they go back to Water 7. We see that Iceberg's pretty much trying to figure out how to save Water 7 of making it more of a floating city. And Frankie has gotten jewel wood, like this super wood that is pretty much very hardened because of all this war stuff going on this one island. And that's what he used the 200 million berries to buy, because it comes up on the black market so infrequently. So he's like, listen, I fucked you guys over. I'm sorry for introducing all this kind of stuff. Let me make you a new ship from this. And that was kind of cool seeing him and Iceberg and the Galileo people going through all this. We get a nice kind of come down as Zoro deals with this crazy woman thinking that like that he's a son. Sanji dealing with this dude and learning about the salt. Luffy helping this girl find her Yagara and giving back, and that really was an affecting one. We learn a little bit more information that the Garp dude, we see Kobe and Helmeppo pop up and say, hey Luffy, and we find out that Garp is his grandpa, and that he's kind of a crazy ass grandpa, that he just would like constantly endanger Luffy, and he's like, what the fuck's up with you, man? It's like, understand a little bit of why Luffy's kind of a little bit weird and kind of a little bit more cavalier of like, I'm gonna do whatever I gotta kind of do because I might die, man. And he's like, then we learn more information about Monkey D. Dragon, which is Luffy's father. He's a revolutionary. He's doing a lot of things against the world government. And of course, we see that they have been brought up on larger kind of bounties. Luffy at 300 million. Zoro up. Everybody pretty much has a bounty now. Frankie's got a 44 million. Sanji's doesn't even have a picture. And Chopper's got a 50 berry bounty. And I'm like, I'm sorry, little dude. And they call him a pet. It's like, God damn it, fuck you, man. So a lot of that stuff's going on. It's really cool to see Garp's relationship with Luffy as they're just really kind of nuts. And you're like, oh God. He's like, oh, I shouldn't have really said a lot of this stuff about Dragon and all that. Really, huh? And it's like, oh God, yeah, you kind of have to do what you got to do. It's like, all right. And he's leaving Luffy, even though he's probably supposed to like capture him. But then, of course, we see that Usopp is trying to regain the courage to ask to come back to the Straw Hats. And the thing is, I actually agree with Zoro on most of this stuff because Usopp was being a complete and utter, like, it was a hard decision. Luffy did not take it lightly of being like, we need a new ship because the Going Merry had done what she had done. And Usopp just wouldn't let her go until the last final minute. And it was nice to see that the Going Merry was able to talk to them as well to say farewell. So him just ejecting, like doing this fight and then leaving the crew like that, coming back just like nothing happened. I agree with Zoro being like, Luffy, you do not just let him back in here. He has to apologize. He does that, we're cool. But no, it can't be easy. And I kind of like that he stood up with that and Sanji agreeing with them, being like, yep. And Luffy's just like, all right. So we see that Frankie and them had pretty much gone through. The Frankie family then asks the Straw Hats to take Frankie with them because he's got a bounty on him and he won't leave here. We learned he's got that guilt that he needs to take care of people, that he shouldn't really follow his dream to a degree because of what happened to Tom and him making the ships and the ships being a part of that. But he wants to make these kind of ships sail around the world, see this thing go through the new world and get to the end of the Grand Line and be this shining kind of example. And Iceberg understands that and wants him to go do that. And then the Frankie family does this whole thing where they take his fucking Speedo and they're like flying through the city and dealing with all this. And Nico Robin fucking like grabs his balls at a certain point and is like, ah! It's like, oh shit. But we see that he's able to, he's been pretty much utilizing this as his own kind of way to just be like, fine, 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 I'll do it. To give kind of power over to the Straw Hats for it. And to say goodbye to his Frankie family, which then Iceberg employs. And we see that the ship is great and grand and will be called the Thousand Sunny as they then have to like escape Garp, who's like, yeah, they've tasked me with capturing your ass, as he starts throwing cannonballs like a motherfucker. Throwing them. Physically fucking throwing them. It doesn't surprise me. I mean, he's Luffy's grandpa, so it's like, it's more like, that's different, even though he's in the same family. It's like, alright. So that was pretty good to kind of see Frankie kind of put in there. And then Usopp's like, they're leaving without me. And he's like, I'm sorry. He finally gets to a point where he says that he's sorry and all that. And then Zoro's like, finally, about time. And it's like the last kind of second, Luffy's able to like throw his arm out, grabs Usopp up, and they're back together again. And Usopp needed to apologize. Because it was hard on everybody. And I understand that it was hard because of his connection with the Going Merry and how they got it. but that doesn't mean that Luffy didn't feel it, that Nami didn't feel it, Zoro didn't feel it, and Sanji and the rest of them. They lived on the Going Merry. It was their home. It was a hard thing to do. But now they're back together again to then get towards the new world. Then we get the Ice Hunters, which is like fucking stupid. It was kind of boring and was really just kind of out of nowhere. We see this other group, the kind of Phoenix Pirates, with this puzzle dude who they got fucked up in the new world and they had their Roger taken by these hunters. We got this dude that's got the power of the hot fruit, and it was only really good to kind of see what the Thousand Sunny can do with like a submersible shark thing, be able to utilize cola power to move on its own volition, so that way it doesn't need to work with the wind. That's about it. And seeing how Frankie interacts with the crew. I think they did enough to kind of like ease kind of tensions and get him kind of squared away in the crew, but this was just kind of a nothing kind of arc. Like, I would definitely recommend skipping it. It was just like, oh god, go to the end, be done, let's kind of get to some new kind of shit here. Now, I know that it's filler and they probably had to catch up with stuff, and that's not... My issue is not that I needed a day new, like, kind of thing to kind of, like, palate cleanse and kind of be like, okay, then let's build up to the next kind of arc. We also got some weird little one-offs where they were dealing with, like, Edo-era kind of Japan, Boss Luffy dealing with some stuff. It's like, okay, nice kind of little distractions. And then Chopper Man at the end of this, and it was just like, this one, the Ice Hunters, it's just like, okay, none of the characters were really that interesting. They had really no motivations that I really cared about except pleasing their papa. I'm like, alright. And getting him flags, and he just had the hot fruit. Now granted, his fight with Luffy was kind of interesting to see how Luffy would deal with him, but then they just kind of got back on and were like going back on track to the new world. I liked how they were trying to do stuff with the Phoenix Pirates, but I didn't care that much. We just had the crisis of like, we got fucked up, and my second in command sacrificed himself, and I don't know why they believed in me. It's like, okay, like, there's potential there, it just was not executed to the kind of heights that One Piece is known for, and I'm just like, I'm okay. So, most of the thing, I definitely love the Enies lobby to see what's going on, how the Straw Hats would go and save their friend, learning about Nico Robin's past and how Spondam's a fucking complete asshole. Their fights and how they were able to like go through and continue on with that with CP9 and getting through and banding together and then getting out and being like, oh god, here are the repercussions. And then learning about Luffy's grandpa, learning about their new ship and getting Frankie and their ship right together and continuing to build and solidify this crew. The Ice Hunters, I'm like, I'm good. So I can't wait to see where the rest of this series goes and what other kind of Straw Hats pop up, how their adventures work out, who they kind of help, and how big their bounties are going to keep getting, and what kind of crazier kind of shit they'll have to deal with the world government. Because the world government, we get more and more information, it's like, this is not good. There needs to be a better way to do this and everything. And we also see that Shanks is dealing with Whitebeard and trying to parlay with him. We see that Ace fights Blackbeard, Teach, and learning that he's got the dark fruit? Like darkness powers. Now granted, I was kind of at my One Piece limit at that point, but it was cool that he like is tangible, he can't become the certain kind of element that he is imbued, and that he can suck things in like gravity, and that he can stop a Devil Fruit user from using their power if he's in physical contact with them. So it's like, damn, that fight was actually pretty decent with Ace and him, so like, goddamn, Ace is going to have to watch out. So, I'm definitely interested to see where this, the rest of these stories go, where everything kind of lines up. Netflix only has Thriller Bark left on it. I am interested to see how the live action goes, because I have been seeing the teasers and everything. I have to see how else I'll do this. I am starting to collect the series in physical form on DVD, so I might just wait and kind of get all the rest of that and go through it in physical kind of form. Granted, I do have the ability to get a kind of free thing for Crunchyroll to keep going on with that, but I am taking a break with this because it's a lot, and there's other kind of things that I'm going to be looking into, like reading certain kind of books, watching certain kind of shows, and One Piece is something that I will continue to go on because I do love the characters, the world building, everything. I mean, shit, I loved looking into Kobe and Helmeppo and seeing that they were able to do things themselves now and are older and have their own kind of power sets and everything. It'll be interesting to see how that kind of stuff works out going forward. It's just, I'm going to have to take my time with it and do it in certain kind of spurts, maybe even deciding to, at certain kind of points, instead of doing seasons, potentially going like arc-wise and being like, here's this arc, here's that arc, because some of them are like over 100 episodes per certain seasons. It's like, that's going to be a lot to kind of condense. I almost felt like I would be kind of a little bit hard-pressed to do this one, but with everything that kind of worked on, I could kind of cut out the chaff and talk about certain kind of things that really kind of resonated with me with Enies Lobby, CP9, or kind of come down with the introduction and the farewell of the Going Merry and the introduction of the Thousand Sunny. And then dealing with the whole Ice Hunter. Bleh. So, those are my opinions on this season. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.